All right, there we go. Okay. Oh dear. All right. So welcome everyone. We are going to be going over some information today with preparing for the holidays. Like Twyla reminded us, December 1st is tomorrow. But if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, or if they're really pressing, this is pretty informal, so you can just put yourself off mute and interrupt me, no problem. All right, so just some housekeeping rules here. If you need to leave the room and go to the washroom, we don't run a tight ship here. Feel free to leave. But we do ask that everyone be respectful of all questions, opinions, and comments. We're all learning here. And we do ask that, people, if it's an unrelated topic, to kind of leave it till the end. But like I said, pretty informal. All right, so today we're going to go over some tips around preparing for the holiday, and we're going to go over how dementia affects communication, as well as some strategies for communication. So we are jumping right in. So for some of us, not all of us, but some of us, the holidays can be pretty stressful. This is kind of tenfold if you are someone caring for someone living with dementia, or if you're a person living with dementia. It can still be possible to be part of significant moments with friends and families, to celebrate people and relationships. And that's what we really want to highlight for this presentation. So as you line up for the holidays, I think everyone's aware that there's lots of sickness going around. I think last year it was, we focused on COVID, but now there's a lot of cold. So be mindful of that as well. Sometimes it's more beneficial to have a virtual holiday if people are quite ill. All right. So first step, health and wellness, of course. Be sure to keep your health and wellness in mind when you're making plans this season. Don't try to overwhelm yourself. Your health and safety is very important. And like we said, with all these colds and runny noses, if it's not something, that might be safe, try to avoid it, especially with the flu, which I'll stop talking about, I promise. I think everyone in our office is sick right now, so I'm a little hyper aware. There is a COVID-19 risk calculator as well. We have a link for it at the end of the presentation, if that's something that you're worried about, which we can follow up with in an email as well. Okay, so timing and scale. We suggest kind of keeping celebrations short if it's possible. At longer gatherings, if it is, consider attending maybe for only the most meaningful part of the event. So if it's an all-day event, maybe go for brunch or something like that. Plan festivities on a day and time that suits the person that's living with dementia. Some people are best in the morning, sometimes it's the afternoon. So try to see what works best for the person and work around that. We also suggest planning smaller get-togethers. It can minimize stress and feelings of being overwhelmed. You could have or plan an event with fewer guests, or stagger the times guests arrive, so it's easier for the person living with dementia to interact one-on-one. Also, it's a great idea to have a little quiet space where the person with dementia can go and have kind of a time to decompress, or even meet with people one-on-one, in a different room, instead of being kind of overstimulated. Okay, so places and platforms. Virtual is always an option, kind of like we're doing tonight, and you can meet so many different people from different areas in the province, or I know a lot of people have family, across Canada or across the world, so that's a great way to interact. But we suggest too, if you're going to visit an unfamiliar home, try to anticipate what you'll need. So we have these great labels that we would be happy to print off that have a sign that says, where the toilet is. So you could tape that to a door, and that could help avoid some of the confusion. Bring along some extra supplies that you might need for, any personal care needs or something like that. And if someone's staying with you, try to anticipate also what they'll need to know. For example, if you have someone who is having trouble finding their own way, try not to leave the door open or leaving pills or other potentially hazardous items where a person can find them. All right, hopefully I'm not going too fast. I can't see the chat, so Brenda, you'll have to pipe in if I am. So now we're going to go over some participation. So for the person living with dementia, some ideas to have them participate would be, things that are familiar. So stirring batter, making Christmas cards, choosing music or wrapping gifts even. And of course, with music, I know quite a few people here have talked about how beneficial music therapy can be. So this is a great opportunity to kind of use it, because I think we've across our lifetime all heard plenty of Christmas music. So that would certainly be in our long-term memories. And if you're going to participate as a caregiver, even if the person with dementia can no longer bake cookies, try to think of ways that you can still include them. So like I said, stirring batter, or, adding the ingredients. I think Brenda had some great tips on a cooking video she posted on our Facebook, if you're looking for ideas there. But before inviting the person with dementia to assist, try to plan ahead, lay everything out that they'll need beforehand to reduce, distractions and stress. And of course, do meaningful things like looking at old family photographs or singing favorite songs. I wonder if we have any singers here. Not me. All right, so for you guys, especially over the holidays, it's already a hectic time, so don't overdo it. It may be tempting, as a caregiver or even as the person living with dementia, to go all out and try to keep traditions from previous years going, but it's really important to pace yourself, because if you're exhausted, it's hard to be patient, it's hard to enjoy the moment. Consider, hiring help or getting some family members to give you a hand. They could bring food, they could come early to set up. There are a number of in-home care agencies as well that may offer one-day assistance. Oh, I think we have Janet coming in, so I'll let her in. Brenda, if you don't mind sending her a message and letting her know that we're recording, as long as that's okay. Another idea is creating new traditions. And fun fact, there's a misconception that people with Alzheimer's or dementia cannot make new memories after their diagnosis, and this is false. You are able to make new memories, so this is an opportunity to create new traditions. You can have a new favorite holiday movie, decorate the tree together, and reminisce about some of the favorite ornaments that you're putting on there. And of course, adjusting. And of course, adjusting your priorities. Ask yourself, how urgent is this? This is kind of going over again, not overdoing it. And be kind to yourself. Recognize the important work that you do and how much you mean to the person you're caring for, or for the person who cares for you. Sometimes my mouse doesn't work. Right. So now we're going to go over quickly, visit some long-term care homes, and then we'll get more into communication tips. But if the person with dementia lives in a long-term care home, it's very different than what you would experience at home, and that can kind of be challenging and bring in, a roller coaster of emotions in itself. But there are ways you can celebrate with them. Bring a favorite holiday treat to share, bring photo albums, and bring items to decorate a door or window. So try not to focus on the activities or traditions that may be lost, and rather think of it as a time to make new traditions and new memories. A person with Alzheimer's or dementia can still contribute to the family unit. They just need more time or things to be altered to really enjoy it. Okay. So how does dementia affect communication? So we'll go over some of this before we go into the practical tips, because I know for my brain, I like to kind of understand why things work the way they do. So dementia can have profound effects on the language abilities of people living with this disease, and that deterioration is known as aphasia. So someone may have difficulties expressing themselves, finding the right words, even understanding spoken language and reading and writing. So in the early stages, we often see this kind of show itself as on the list you can see on the right. So finding the right word, following multiple step instructions, conversations, staying on topic. So people with dementia will lose specific communication abilities during the early and middle, as well as the late stages of the disease. In the early stages, they may not be able to find the right words for objects or things like that. And they may substitute an incorrect word or may not be able to find the word at all. So they may also have trouble understanding humor, jokes, or someone who talks really fast, like myself sometimes. They have difficulty following multiple step instructions, and they require increased concentration to follow those conversations. So that's kind of why we say sometimes it's more beneficial to keep those gatherings small, so you can have that really enjoyable one-on-one time. So common changes that we might see in the middle and later stages, there's some similarities there, but understanding conversation, written words, perseveration, interpreting, facial expressions, and aphasic speech. As it progresses more and more, words become irretrievable. They may need to think longer before expressing their thoughts, and it can cause a loss of spontaneity in communication. So jumping from conversation topic to conversation topic might not necessarily be, as possible as it once was. As the vocabulary becomes more limited, they may repeat the same words or statements repeatedly. So that's perseveration. And they may have trouble explaining or understanding abstract concepts such as I feel blue. And again, with the facial expressions, nodding your head, they may not be able to understand that that means yes or no. So in the later stages, it appears as though individuals lose the capacity for recognizable speech. Although those who are in the later stages will still occasionally utter words or phrases, nonverbal communication will become increasingly important. So, despite these changes, communication remains possible at all stages of the disease, Although it may become difficult to understand what the person is trying to communicate to us, remember that the person's words and actions usually have meaning, and even behavior can be a form of communication for someone living with dementia. All right, so our top first tip is kind of before you speak, try to set the stage. So reduce distractions in the environment. For example, if the TV's blaring or the radio's blaring, try to turn that off or at least down. And before engaging in conversation, introduce yourself, tell them your name and your relation to them. And I know that can kind of be a bit of a hurdle because, this is someone who knows you, someone that you love, but it doesn't hurt to do it because it kind of takes the pressure off of them, to try to figure out who you are or place you. So it just kind of opens up conversation right away. So as mentioned earlier, keep track of conversation in larger groups. Keeping track of conversations in larger groups may become difficult for those living with dementia. So it's ideal to have one-on-one conversations or a smaller group talking. And of course, face the person. Making eye contact with the person will help them focus their attention on you. And also a little side note here, don't forget to account for vision and hearing problems. Make sure that the person is wearing a working hearing aid or clean glasses if prescribed. And one last little plug here, remember to schedule regular checkups for those things. So how to speak. Be aware of your tone and body language. Get close enough so they can see your facial expressions and any gestures you may use. Remain calm and speak in a relaxed tone of voice to put them at ease. Avoid abrupt or hurried movements, especially if you're a big hand talker. Sometimes, sitting on your hands can help reduce that. Instead of criticizing or correcting, ignore the failures and remember to be supportive, positive, as well as encouraging. Speak clearly at a slightly slower pace and use short and simple sentences. And use closed-ended questions which are focused and require a simple yes or no. Like instead of, what kind of dessert do you want to have? Say, would you like, this dessert? And they'll say yes or no. And avoid using idioms such as it's raining cats and dog outside, or it's time to hit the sack, which may become confusing. And of course, show respect and patience. Use the person's preferred name when addressing them, and try not to speak down to the person and avoid childish or elder talk or any demeaning language. Avoid talking about the person as though they're not present. They may still understand what is being said, even though they've lost the ability to produce the words that are in their mind. And do not talk over the person as well. So we're doing communication one-on-one. So now we're on how to listen. Listen carefully to what the person is saying and observe both verbal and nonverbal communications. Be patient and try not to interrupt the person, even if you think you know what they're saying. If the person is having a difficult time finding the right words, you can offer a guess as long as they appear to want some help. The person may need more time to process information, so provide reassurance. And if they sense that you're impatient or agitated, they may feel stressed or frustrated as well. Make your communication a two-way process that engages the person with dementia, so involve them in the conversation. If you don't understand what is said, avoid making assumptions and check back with them to see if you've understood what they mean. Like, you said the weather was nice today. Is that what you said? Just to double check. And humor is so incredible. It can bring you closer and it can release tension, and it's good therapy. Laughing together over misunderstandings can help. And if the person seems sad, encourage them to express their feelings and remember to show that you understand. So validate those emotions wherever, whichever emotion they're riding in that moment. Okay, other ways of communication is using actions instead of words, humor, provide reassurance. So only 7% of our communication happens verbally, which always blows my mind when I say that fact, because we're so used to having the opportunity to be able to communicate verbally. So it can happen in so many different ways. There's nonverbal, which is body language, and paraverbal, which is tone and volume. So try to use actions as well as words. For example, it's time to go for a walk, point the door, or bring the person's coat or sweater to illustrate what you mean. Use body movements such as pointing or demonstrating an action to help the person understand what you're saying. And like we said, humor is fantastic. So joking around can really lighten the mood when someone's feeling maybe overwhelmed in a situation. All right. I went through that pretty quick. I will stop recording and I will stop sharing.